Hi, my name is Alyssa. Welcome to the Spring Fling. I'm so glad that we get to spend a little bit of time in a very important interview this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, with Tommy Forrest. He's joining us virtually from South Carolina, and we're so excited to have him here. Welcome, Tommy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you for asking.
I'm
We are so excited
with you today.
Awesome. We're so glad you're here. Tommy is amazing. As I've had the opportunity to talk to him a couple times over the last few weeks and get to know a little bit more about him, I have been delighted by his personality, his passion for quilting, his huge element of generosity and hospitality that he shares with others through quilting. And I think that all of you will be delighted and charmed just as much as I have been. So let's jump right in. Let's get to know a little bit more about Tommy. Tommy, tell me a little about yourself. How did you get into quilting?
Well, after my wife passed away, actually it was 2012. I really needed something because I was her caregiver and she was at home hospice. And when I lost her, I not only lost my wife, but I also lost my job because I didn't have anything to do. So my next door neighbor taught me into learning how to sew so I could make some memory bears from some of her shirts and blouses. And she taught me how to sew. And then at some point I said I would like to learn how to quilt. And she took it literally. And that was about maybe 500 quilts ago. So that's how I got started.
Wow, that's amazing. So tell me about some of your very first projects. How did what really got you hooked on quilting?
Well, my very first quilt was a pattern called Winning Hand. My next door neighbor bought all the fabric and brought me a pattern, and I already had a rotary cutter and a few of the items, and I had a sewing machine. So she bought all, it was all batiks, and I made a twin XL bedspread in Winning Hand, which is on point. And because I learned how to quilt on point, that's one of my two favorite ways to sew it on point. It creates interest and motion, and most people think it's really hard, but it's not. My favorite thing to say about that is it's just sewing. And that's why we have seam rippers. So when we don't sew it right, we can fix it. And like sometimes you can fix it over and over and over again. But that's how I learned how to sew, was making memory bears, and quilting just seemed like a good way to keep doing something that I really enjoy doing. And I'm knee deep in it now all the time and chin deep in it most of the time. So
So when, after your neighbor introduced you to sewing, did you get your first long arm quilting machine?
2 years. It was the Gracie King. It's I guess it was the last wooden frame that Grace made. And I got it and a 14 plus Unique. I still have that machine. It's got about 60 million stitches on it.
Holy cow.
And the ladies at Quilts of Valor that quilt, they fight over it. It sews so beautifully, and it's easy to take care of and keep sewing good. So it was my first one. And then a few years later, I added a 21 with the QCT5 software on a continuum frame. So I have the two of them.
That's amazing. Tell me a little bit more about how you got to where you are. What brought you from, making a few quilts? What did you do with your first quilts? Like where did this all start?
Well, my next door neighbor and I made lap quilts for folks at the nursing home. They're in wheelchairs. And we were making 3 each a week. And that's what actually drove us to get the first long arm. Was we were having to rent a machine, and it was costing too much money to rent one, so we decided to buy one. But we were doing 6 quilts a week, taking them to the nursing home, and then in October of 2013, I was awarded a Quilts of Valor, and that changed everything for me. I've dedicated my whole sewing effort now to Quilts of Valor.
It's
And we
amazing.
have a group here in Anderson, and we do about 500 quilts a year for veterans. And I'm a veteran, so I thought getting a Quilt of Valor was like the best thing ever. But when you award one to somebody, it feels just as good and sometimes better.
That's amazing. So tell me more about your group. You mentioned that you have a Quilts of Valor group there in Anderson. Do you run it? Tell me about how you got involved with this.
Well, when I first started doing Quilts of Valor, they didn't have groups. So when they first started them, the upstate South Carolina coordinator came over and visited with me and my next door neighbor, and she asked me would I be the group leader for the group here in Anderson, and it was a no-brainer. So I did it, and we started off with I was the only member, and now we have actually over 100, but I call it 99 because we have 99 folks that actually sew. Not all of them sew all the time, of course, but they, in some way or another, they contribute all the time. We have ladies that only bind, and we have some that only make tops. The long arms are available to anybody in the group that wants to learn how. We do a 2-day class on it. We'll teach them free motion or use the computers. We have almost 2,000 square feet in the Joe Brown Senior Center here in Anderson, South Carolina. And it's 3 classrooms in a former junior high school. 3 of the ladies that sew with me actually went to school there. And one of them, mother went to school there. Living in small town America is the best thing in the world. But then when you start tying family together over and over and over again, it's even more special. So.
Yeah, that is very special. I think you told me that you're the only man in 2 quilt guilds. How has that been?
Let's see, it's been 9 years ago that I started. So I don't think 9 years ago that anybody thought I'd be around maybe even a year. But in that last picture you showed, the lady on the right, that's my next door neighbor. She's the one that actually taught me how to sew.
Wow, that's awesome.
I refer to her as sister. We're not kin, but if you sent me out to find me a sister, she's who I'd come back with. So in my heart, she is my sister.
That's amazing.
Yes, it's amazing. And every time I think, well, we're never going to be able to do anything like this again, something will happen and we do. But we've actually awarded quilts to 3 gentlemen all on their 101st birthday.
Wow.
And that, to me, that just knowing 3 101 persons, but they're all, World War II veterans. And it's just an amazing experience. And then we've wrapped 7 or maybe 8 100-year-old veterans. So.
Wow.
One of those was an Army nurse from World War II. So
Wow.
we love wrapping the lady veterans too. So and now, of course, they're always amazed, that a guy is the one that gets in touch with them wanting to do that. I can't help that part. So. Well, in our QOV group, we actually have one other man who is a Navy veteran, and he said one day that he would like to try a hand at it. So we brought him in and sat him down, and he's made about 7 or 8 quilts in the last year to award to fellow Navy veterans. So
that's amazing.
There's a world of veterans living in Anderson County, so we're never going to run out of people to make quilts for. So.
That's great. So you've told me some stories about some of the early days of your group there. Tell us about your first trip to buy fabric wholesale in, I think it was King Mountain, North Carolina.
Yes, there's a fabric place up there called Faust Textiles. Local folks from Kings Mountain area, but he has a great selection of made in the USA patriotic fabrics. So in my mind, the best thing in the world we could do is if we could make every quilt out of all US made fabrics. But it goes a little beyond that because the cotton they use in the fabrics that he sells is actually grown in South Carolina, and the fabric is woven and printed in South Carolina. So it's really local product. So not only are we helping veterans, but we're helping the local economy as well. And he has really good prices on this, so everybody wins.
Yeah.
Anytime you can do something to help the US of A, you need to do it. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love that you mentioned, helping these local businesses and supporting that local economy. I think we have a picture of a quilt top that you made somewhat recently. It's an orange one.
that's called a binder star quilt. I made that while I was visiting my daughter in Kentucky. I pieced it all. I didn't cut it all, but I pieced it all in one day. All of it was sewn on a 1938 Singer featherweight. It's special in a lot of ways. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a helicopter. And this quilt was actually awarded to a helicopter pilot who served in Vietnam. It added to the specialness of it. But I love to do things like that and find the right person for the right quilt. And one of the things that we asked our recipients is, how tall are you and how much do you weigh? Because you don't want to give somebody a quilt that doesn't fit them. So if somebody's tall and thin, we give them a longer quilt. If somebody's big and short, we give them one that's wider. So we try to make it personal because
That's
it is
awesome.
personal. But if it's personal but it doesn't fit, then some of the whole idea gets lost in the wind that way. So
Yeah, that's amazing. I know I was talking to Carla earlier, and she showed me a quilt that you made for her, and just as a friendly gesture, and she loves it. She told me how much she cherishes it. And I think it's amazing that you personalize and put so much thought into it because, I mean, even though I have only met one person who's received a quilt from you, I can tell how much that means to her, that kind of personalization. And I think that that's really something.
well, you actually have three recipients working at Grace. Jason Chateau, I made him a quilt, and I also made Aubrey Jerome a quilt.
That's amazing. That's
They have
fantastic.
all affected my life in a very positive way, and that's what quilting is all about. It's showing your love for somebody, your respect, and sharing what you do have to give, to with them. So
Yeah,
it's fun.
I think that that's beautiful. Tell me, how has, that giving, that personalization, that what you just described, how has that changed you as a person? How has that helped to benefit your life?
I think that I've probably gotten 100 million emails since I fell victim to the computer system. Uh, the very sweetest, kindest, and heart-rending email I ever got was from Aubrey. I printed it and framed it. It's she expressed gratitude for something that I truly enjoyed doing, and I was moved to do it for her. But then when I got her email, it was quite heart rending. So quilters are an odd bunch of people. We try to find any kind of reason that'll work to make somebody a quilt so we can share our love and our talent. So
Yeah,
that's what it's all about.
that's beautiful. And, I know you've mentioned that this was something that started because of, something hard that happened in your life, being the loss of your wife. And how has quilting helped you to, what's a good way to say this? I guess kind of to find peace with life. And not just that, because, loss is something that we're continually learning how to deal with. But how has this process and this journey for you, how has it changed the way you see yourself?
Well, I didn't think it was anything all that special for me. To me, I don't like. Sometimes I'm embarrassed by the accolades because it's a whole group of us. I'm just one tooth on a big gear. The foundation does thousands and thousands of quilts a year, and we contribute about 500 of that every year. But it's kind of hard to explain. But last November, I was named the Anderson County Senior Citizen of the Year. It may be the only time in 77 years that I've ever been speechless. I had no idea that I had even been considered for it. When I actually got the award, he called my name, and I was still looking around in the crowd trying to figure out who it was going to be. All of my kids were there. All of my really close friends were there, and it was just, it was special. It really was. So we have a little credo and a card that we give every recipient. It says, "We believe that as we sow, love, care, and gratitude flow from our hearts to our hands and into the quilts we sew. And we want you to know that through our quilt, you are forever in our hearts." And that's how all the people in my group feel that way. And it's hard to put into words, but that's the long and the short of it. Is it's the most rewarding thing that I've ever done in all my life. So I hope I live to be 100 and keep making quilts till then too.
That's wonderful. What a fantastic legacy. We've talked a lot about, some of the advantages and the positive things that you've seen because of this. Tell us a little bit about challenges that you've seen with your quilting journey or obstacles that you've had to overcome. Tell us briefly about that.
In 2015, I had a heart attack in my kitchen and fell on concrete floor and broke my back.
Wow.
And I ended up having to have multiple vertebrae tied together with titanium rods, and I couldn't do much after that, because of all the hardware they'd put in me.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I got to sit and sew, even though I'd been hurt and all, I knew I had found what I was looking for. The last thing I did before I started full-time taking care of my wife was I built an engine for my car. So I've always liked to doing mechanical things, and sewing is a mechanical thing when you really look at it hard and figure it out. It's mechanics. So I enjoy doing it. I love working on sewing machines. I restore featherweights, not to sell and make money at, but to get them back into circulation. I buy parts and pieces and make them. So that's kind of my sideline. But quilting, it means everything to me. I'm so grateful that sister taught me how to sew. And now I just want to share it with the world.
That is so amazing. And now that you are sharing it with the world, and as you have been over the last several years, I think that I could say that, us here at Grace and everyone who you've ever had any hand in giving a quilt to, whether that be parts of Quilts of Valor or as a friend or whatever the case may be, I think that I can speak for them and say that they all agree that we are all glad that sister taught you how to sew as well, because it's brought a difference into our lives. Even just hearing about your story has brought a difference into my life. And I think that that's wonderful. The difference that one person can make it's frankly amazing.
Well, thank you. And I would encourage anybody that's never done a Quilt of Valor or never seen it. You can go on our website. It's qovf.org, and it'll tell you the closest Quilt of Valor group to where you live. And if you've never seen or been part of an award ceremony, you can get in touch with whoever name is listed there with the phone number and ask them, can you come to the next wrapping? And that's how you get started.
Tell us, for those who don't know what a Quilts of Valor wrapping or ceremony, or what Quilts of Valor is, briefly describe to us what a wrapping ceremony is like. What happens in a wrapping ceremony?
Well, we have this thing. We make up a packet of information. One of the items in it is a postcard, and we thank each veteran 3 ways. We thank them for their service, their valor in serving our nation, and we thank them for their patriotism. And then we let them know that they're forever in our hearts and our thoughts. And I don't know exactly how to put it, but I served before Vietnam, so I'm not a Vietnam veteran. I've never been in combat, but I did sign my name 23 times, and one of those signatures is a blank check for up to and including your life. And a lot of guys came home from Vietnam and were cursed and spit on and have never really been thanked in any way, shape, or form for serving. And that's one of the things that we say at every ceremony is welcome home, and let them know that somebody really does care that they served. And we do that with a 60-inch wide, 80-inch long Quilt of Valor that can be any variation of colors or some panels, some all little pieces. We have one lady that she's what we call a stripper. She sews little small strips of paper together or fabric together, and some of it is paper pieced or sewn together on dryer sheets to give it some body while you're sewing the little pieces. She'll make an entire quilt out of those little small pieces. And, it's a lot of work, but it's her passion. That's what she loves. And her husband, who we lost 2 years ago, was a Vietnam veteran. And he was awarded a quilt at our sewing group, at Quilts of Valor. So she saw how much it meant to him, and that's what she does all the time now. She makes Quilts of Valor, and she's actually an award-winning quilter. So it makes it even more special when somebody that can sell quilts and make money at it doesn't choose to do that. They want to make quilts to present someone for serving our nation. So.
That's amazing. Thank you for telling us about this. I mean, I know that I can speak for myself in this and hopefully for all of our listeners as well, but hearing your story has brought me so much inspiration. I've thought of different things that I can do to kind of follow in your example in my own way, to take the experiences that I've had and to use them to help other people, to make a difference in their lives, even if it's just something like a quilt or even something less significant. I think that's amazing.
The good thing is once you see it take place and see the tears and the joy and how much everybody enjoys it, then you might want to participate in it. We have ladies that they don't have time to sew. They work, full-time jobs, and then they're moms and housekeeping, they got all that to do. So they don't get to do the sewing and the quilting part of it, but they love going and being there and hugging the veterans and letting them know that their service is recognized and appreciated. So I would encourage everybody to look into, going to a wrapping and see what it's all about. You might find you a new love.
That is fantastic. Thank you, Tommy. And thank you for sharing your story with us, for inviting us to be a part of this, and for sharing your inspiration and your story with us. We appreciate you. We appreciate your service, and we appreciate your ongoing community efforts to really help and uplift the people around you. We know it makes a difference to everyone that you come in contact with, even in an interview like this. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.